This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. I thought it would be fun to show you a very unusual knitting machine. At least this is quite unusual for me. I had never seen one of these before. This is a Singer System 9000. It was built by the Maydag Company, and it was purchased in England around 1991. The cone of yarn is sitting on the floor, and you can see the tension mast here in the center of the frame, right here. And I have the yarn coming up through this triangular piece that has an eyelet. So that's the first step for the yarn. Then the yarn comes on up, and it goes through a little tension wheel up here and comes forward under the metal bar. Then after it comes under the metal bar, it comes up and through the rabbit ear and then finally through the hole, and there's a clip on the tension mast that holds the yarn. But I want to point out that the needle bed is aluminum, not plastic, so it's very light but strong. In addition, I want to point out some of the controls on the left end of the needle bed. I'm zooming in on that area of the needle bed. Now, there is a kind of a wheel with symbols on it, and that is an indicator for the position of the two beds. In addition, there's an unusual item here. This shows the difference, the gap between the two beds. That can be adjusted for different yarns. It's a feature that I'm not familiar with on other machines. And this is the racking handle. And with pushing and pulling on the racking handle, I can move the front bed back and forth. In addition, the front bed can be dropped down. You get a pretty good gap with it. It can be dropped down this far, so you've got quite a bit of room to work in here, maybe for a bind off, and then it can be brought up part way or brought up all the way very easily. The bed doesn't weigh much and it moves very smoothly. Now, here are the controls on the front carriage. First of all, this wheel and this wheel are what we call lily buttons on a Japanese machine. They're used for doing jacquard. This button is called the jacquard button. These two wheels move the position of the needles. They seem more like Russell levers to me than anything else. This is a cancel button, so when one of these buttons is pushed in, you can push the circle button and the button will pop up. This button is for knitting with just the V. This is for tuck stitch, and this circle button is for knitting circular or for doing a one-way sort of stitch. For instance, you can put it in with the tuck button and it does something special. These two wheels up here are for changing the yarn feeder plate. This plate can come out and a ferrule plate can go in instead. Now I'm pointing my camera at the back carriage. And let me point out these controls. I have the same 4 buttons, the cancel button, the knit button, the tuck button, and a one-way button. I have these same 2 levers, which are for moving needle position, rather like Russell levers. And I have another wheel, which is for the stitch size, or what we might call tension on a Japanese machine. Now I want to just show some of the most basic kinds of knitting on this interesting machine. I've arranged for 1x1 ribbing on the front bed. I've got every other needle. On the back bed, I have every other needle, and these are arranged in such a way that they're not going to collide. I'll go across and back with the carriages just to even up the needles, put them in nice straight rows. Now I want to thread the carriage. I'm just going to put the yarn through a double-eyed needle, and then I'm going to run it down through the yarn feeder on the carriage, down below the machine, and I'm going to clip it down below the machine. I'll use a clothespin to do that. Now my settings for the first row of ribbing involve having this V punch down, this button on both of the carriages. It's the V, and I have these in the neutral position in the center. Tension 1 on the front, tension 1 on the back. I do one row from right to left. Here's a really tight close-up of the zigzag row, and I'm going to put the comb in so that I can weight down the knitting. So I put this ribber type comb in, open and close the wire. Then I'm going to reach underneath and put one of these small weights on each end of the comb. So this is what will hold the knitting down and cause the stitches to knit through, or help the stitches to knit through. Now I need to set the carriages for circular knitting. I cancel the buttons and push the circle button in, and I'm going to turn up to tension 2. I'm going to do the same thing on the back. Then I just knit 2 rows to make a circle. Here comes the first row. Here's the second row. Each carriage is the same. I loosened up to stitch size 4. I got the circle button canceled, and then I pushed in the V button, and I did the same thing on the other carriage. Now when I go back and forth, I'm going to get knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. The carriage is really easy to push, and I'll put a few more rows of knit 1, purl 1 ribbing on this. All I have to do to switch to half fisherman, or what we often call English rib, is cancel the button on the back carriage. Oops, cancel button. And then push in the rib and the circle key over there on the right. Now it's going to do English rib, or half fisherman. Do some rows of English rib. I can see that it's putting tuck stitches down when I go toward the left. I find this machine really smooth, quiet, and easy to operate. The last thing I wanted to do in my first ventures with the Singer 9000 was full fisherman rib. I leave the setting on the back carriage. It was set on tuck and circle. On the front I'm going to cancel and set it on tuck, tuck and circle. And then I'm going to knit some rows of full fisherman rib. Broke the yarn, and I'm going to go across with no yarn to remove the knitting so that we can see what we have. This is the sample that I just knitted, and at the bottom of the sample, let me zoom in, you can see the circular cast on and the knit 1, purl 1 ribbing for quite a few rows. Then right here I switched to the English rib. And you can see that this is a wider, deeper, more decorative stitch. That stitch is a huge favorite of mine. Finally, let's look at the top section, which begins right here. And that is the full fisherman rib, even thicker, significantly wider, and just a wonderful warm stitch. It's reversible, so it looks great on both sides. So that is our first adventures with the Singer System 9000 knitting machine, also called a Superba or a White or a Phildar machine.